Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, the Gateway Experience series finale. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, we made it. The final episode of the Gateway Experience series here on the Mind War podcast. I can't believe it. Almost an entire year of episodes. We have dedicated a full year to exploring the Gateway Experience tapes. It's been absolutely amazing. We're going to do a quick review at the end of this episode to kind of talk about the things that we've went through. But before we do, we have two more tapes that we have to discuss. And the first tape, we're going to jump right into the deep dive, is Wave 8-7, titled Inner Earth. Very strange tape. I was not expecting this whatsoever. A real departure from what we've seen with the rest of the tapes, but quite a fun adventure and a little journey of its own. So let's get started and hear what we had to say. This was recorded just a few nights ago after I listened to tape Wave 8, Tape 7, Inner Earth.
Wave 8-7, The Inner Earth. The narrator tells us to explore the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and then tells us to explore the four elements of earth, water, air, and fire. And after we get done thinking about those things, he tells us to sink into the center of the earth.
Okay, so right away, this tape takes a pretty dramatic turn away from what we've seen in the past with things like self-help, learning all sorts of different occult type tools, things like remote viewing, astral travel, out-of-body experience, these type of things, right? It moved even away from the kind of transition that happened in the later stages of the Gateway Experience tapes, where we moved away from self-help and started moving more towards helping others who have recently passed away. All of a sudden, we find ourselves on this adventure. And just like I mentioned there, the narrator tells us to first really start to think about the mineral kingdom. And I was like, okay. So in my mind, I started thinking about soil and rocks and kind of rooting around in the dirt. And then he asked us to start thinking about the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. It was very strange, kind of, I was like, why are we doing this? Why are we thinking about these different living systems, right? Thinking about plants, thinking about animals. There was nothing wrong with it, nothing scary or anything like that, just a little strange. So I followed the narrator's directions and thought about those different living organism type systems, right? And then he says, I want you to start thinking about the elements. Okay, so now we start getting a little more esoteric with earth, water, fire, and air. And he really has us start to explore those things in our own mind. Again, I thought that was a little strange, but I just did my best to kind of think of those different types of, elements that we deal with in our life. And I was really wondering, like, where is all this going to culminate to? What is the purpose of all of this? And so then, as I just stated, after we get done exploring these different systems on our own, just our own knowledge and kind of thinking about these things, basically for me, I was kind of reviewing the basics of life science, right? And then he says, I want you to start sinking into the center of the earth. I thought, okay, well, here we go. And that was a very beautiful feeling. Again, that sinking backwards feeling. I've often said that that's almost, it feels better than floating upwards. That sinking backwards feels so amazing. So that's what I did. Just was sinking backwards through the layers of the earth, working my way towards the center of the earth. And I guess we'll see what we find.
And when we get there, we start in focus 12, and he says to observe the inner earth in focus 12. He wants us to visualize a crystal, a giant crystal. I see a black obsidian crystal in front of me, giant, that we're able to get into. And he says, now observe the inside of the earth. And I was thinking about when lava comes out of a volcano. For us, it's bright red because when the lava hits the air, it starts on fire. But inside the earth, it's just black. It's black and it's swirling and it's burning. But it's strange because there's no light to it. So you feel the burning, you feel the minerals that make up the lava. You feel it as a liquid form, and it's still moving around, but there's no visual, there's no light to see it. It's very strange. And that was really it. We were inside of this giant crystal looking at it, and the narrator tells us to visualize the center of the earth in different focus levels, and each one was a little bit different. But there was a point where it felt like the mentor was there with me, kind of moving around me as if he was observing things too. And then in focus 27, the final focus level where we observe the center of the earth, I did begin to see geometric structures being formed inside of the center of the earth, but I don't know what that means. Being inside of the crystal, it felt very hollow, and that's what I thought the earth was at first, until I realized, no, that's just being in the crystal. Very strange tape, very major departure from what we've seen in the past. So now we go to tape 8-8.
Okay, folks. Again, a very strange tape. So while I was floating downwards, as I mentioned there, I felt the mentor, right? The dark passenger. We've talked about that before. This is your animal instincts. This is the spirit that is passed down through the physical, through actual real reincarnation, which is physical reproduction. We've figured that out during this series. Reincarnation is not about your own personal individual spirit coming back down into another physical body. Nope, that's selfish. It doesn't happen. What we're talking about is reincarnation through the physical. Your own individual conscious spirit isn't passed on, but what is passed on is the animal spirit, that animal instincts, what I call the mentor, the dark passenger, if you will. And so as I was floating down, the dark passenger sort of showed himself, disconnected himself in a way. He was there connected to me. And for any of you who have seen the movie Venom, right? This cartoon, it's a black version of Spider-Man, basically. And when you see the movie, he kind of floats around the main character, still attached to him, but he's kind of this black goo floating all around him in his own shape. And that's kind of what this felt like. It was almost as if when I was floating down towards the center of the earth, the mentor was bored with the travel, and he was kind of looking around and just doing his own thing. Very strange. Wasn't expecting that whatsoever. So we get down into the center of the earth. The narrator tells us to visualize a crystal in front of us. Of course, I love obsidian. So I visualized an obsidian crystal in front of me. I got inside of it. That's basically the vehicle that we used to gain access to the center of the earth. Now, at first, it felt very empty. And I was almost hearing the echo from being inside of this crystal, right? You can hear it echo. And I'm thinking, is the earth hollow? Is that what this tape is trying to tell me? Because I've heard of this hollow earth theory and all that stuff. I'm like, this is very strange. Why did the Gateway Experience tape create this tape where it wants us to discover the hollow earth? I just thought that's very strange. It doesn't make any sense. But once I realized, oh, okay, that's just this crystal that I'm in, right? This vehicle that I'm in traveling into the center of the earth, then I realized, okay, no, it is more lava on the outside. So normally when we picture the center of the earth, if you see a drawing of it, a depiction, a painting, whatever, you see it as lit up bright red or orange and yellow like fire, right? And we picture lava just like we do when it comes out of the volcano, bright red, spitting fire, right? And so that's what we think of the center of the earth. And of course, the center of the earth is often associated with hell, right? When we see pictures of hell, we see fire and all sorts of things, you know, monsters attacking you, all that type of stuff, whatever. But what I observed, like I said in the recording there is no light in the center of the earth. It's completely dark. And I know that's a small fact that really doesn't, it doesn't seem that important, but it was something new to have learned. It was just a new thought process of, oh yeah, the center of the earth obviously doesn't have any light in it. There's no oxygen down there to create fire. But we are still told that it is this molten, minerals, right? All sorts of minerals down there, lava basically flowing around, swirling around, right? And so that was very interesting. That was not only a visual, but a feeling. Okay, and like I described in the recording, you can see and feel the lava flowing around you. Okay, and I think this is why we spent so much time earlier in the tape exploring the different, the different elements, right? Because lava is, number one, it's minerals. So it is a hard, solid, thing, right? It's made out of minerals. But when it's in lava form, now it's fluid. So now we have a disconnect, right? Because normally we think of minerals as being solid and hard. They're not fluid in nature. So now you have a solid that is also fluid. At the same time, fire is introduced because we're told that this stuff is extremely hot, right? We see it when it comes out of the volcano. It's burning. So now we have the solid, the liquid, and the fire all occurring at one time. Almost a new type of element in a way. But because there is a lack of air, again, there is no fire. So I guess that's it. I guess that was Wave 8, Tape 7, Inner Earth. I'm not really sure what the purpose of it was. I think maybe, like we've seen in the past, some of these tapes really, I think, were made specifically for engaging your imagination, right? Now, again, I listened to Wave 8-7 and then listened to Wave 8-8 right afterwards. And with that, Wave 8-7 was that warm-up in a way, right? And it got me ready for the experience that I was going to have in Wave 8, Tape 8. So maybe that's all it is. Maybe it was just, the whole purpose is just kind of a warm-up tape. But again, I don't know that I took away anything that was of like personal value or anything that was, self-help or anything like that. Just a strange adventure. Maybe one new piece of information, just kind of visualizing the inside, the inner core of the earth in a different way, that it's actually dark. It's not red and full of fire like we've been taught. And in this new type of element in a way, where we have a solid that is also a liquid that is also fire, but there is this lack of oxygen down there, so we don't see the light, right? Very strange tape, but it was, again, a great warm-up for Wave 8, Tape 8. All right, folks, let's do our deep dive into Wave 8, Tape 8, the Absolute. So let me set the scene for this. So again, I listened to these tapes just a few nights ago, and it was on the night of the lunar eclipse. So this was an amazing night. Okay. I mean, the lunar eclipse, I've never seen anything like this before. I've seen lunar eclipses in the past. We had one just last year, but the one that happened the other night was amazing. The moon was blood red. I mean, almost fully red. And for hours I was out there watching and recording and taking pictures and, of course, doing magic. Absolutely amazing night. It was very beautiful. It was really a portal to what we saw with this tape. And let's dive into it, and I'll do my best to kind of explain the multiple layers of what was going on here.
Tape 8-8. The narrator tells us to think about our lives, all the good and the bad, and place the totality of our lives into our energy conversion box and close the heavy lid.
So that piece, I described it very quickly, okay? The narrator takes a lot of time to walk you through your life. He uses a lot of descriptive words, which are going to trigger all sorts of thoughts and emotions and memories that you may have had. And what we do, again, what we're trying to do with this is we're thinking of our entire life thus far, and we place all of it into our energy conversion box. Not just our worries and our concerns, but the good and the bad. The totality of our life, everything, we put it in the box. And what I learned from this tape, I believe this tape would be best used by someone who is about to die. I believe this tape is leading them to the doorway that once you open and cross through, you go into the afterlife. I think that's what this tape was. So the first step in that is we are reviewing our life, a life review. We've heard this before. And we're taking our life and everything, all the good and the bad, and we're putting it in our energy conversion box and closing the heavy lid. And then we move on through the rest of our journey.
Then he tells us to visualize a hallway with a door at the end. And as we move towards the doorway, he says that we can open the door and just look out and explore, or we can fully go through the door for our final time. That was somewhat shocking to hear. And obviously, I was not ready for my final time, but this was one of the strongest and most intense out-of-body experiences. There was no spirit body. It was more just spirit light, just white light floating upwards. It felt amazing. There was no shape of a human body. It was just kind of just starting from a flat plane and just white light moving upwards. And after listening and being in this state for about 20 minutes, it was time for me to wake up and Now I am down here. It is the totality of a lunar eclipse as I'm speaking to you right now. The moon is blood red.
Sorry, got a little emotional there. Just hearing myself talk about that tape brought back that feeling. Okay. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this tape since I did it, and there's a few things I left out there. So I think before heading down the hallway, there was a spotlight. A spotlight came out of the darkness and was looking down for spirits who were ready to go. And it's that spotlight that came down that led to the hallway. I remember that part. I remember seeing the spotlight moving back and forth, and it landed on me the first time. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is going to feel beautiful, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready to go through the door for the final time, because the narrator really was suggesting that this is an option. If you are ready to fully pass away, now's the time. So when the spotlight first hit me, I said, whoa, hold on. I'm not ready. I don't even want to look yet, right? So the spotlight keeps going, and it came back to me. And that's when that hallway of light appeared, that tunnel of light. We've heard about it before. A million times, all throughout history, the tunnel of light as you're dying. You float up through the light towards the doorway, right? Simple. So easy. I mean, you can visualize it. You've heard the story a million times. This isn't something new, right? And again, one thing I left in the recording is I felt Mother Mind War there with me. And she was so excited. She was trying to take my hand and have me go with her. She was so ready. She raced down the hallway and through the door. She was ready to go. And again, this on the night of the lunar eclipse. I believe that blood red moon was a portal for Mother Mind War to finally move into the beyond. And now, because of my curiosity, of course, and because we've come this far, and because there is no fear here in the Mind War, I also moved through the tunnel of light to the door. And it was just so brilliant. Just brilliant white light, just loving and kind, and welcoming and warm. All of the things that we can hope that life after death really truly is. And I believe that's what this tape was. Wave 8, tape 8, the absolute. I think it was for people who are either, one, ready to die, ready to leave their physical bodies for the very last time. I hope that maybe someday, when it's my turn, that this is the tape that I'll be listening to. Or it's for gateway explorers like ourselves who are curious and who are brave. And we take the time to actually go and look and see what lies beyond. And like I said, it's absolutely beautiful. There's nothing to be afraid of. And in some ways, you can be excited. But remember, we can't let our excitement get the best of us, because we still have so much work to do here. That's why I turned back and said, I can't go yet. I'm not ready. There's still way too much work to do here on Earth. There's still Too many more episodes of the Mind War podcast to make. I mean, folks, we're just getting started. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Well, folks, what an amazing year this has been. An entire year we have dedicated the Mind War podcast to the Gateway Experience tapes. I've never seen any podcast do a deep dive really on any subject like we've done here. I truly am proud of what we've done, and you should be proud as well. It's most times when you hear about the Gateway Experience tapes, it's either going to be maybe on a podcast that's 1 hour long where they just scratch the surface of some of the conspiracies that are associated with the tapes, or, maybe a quick video or even a reel, just a short video that gives someone's, 1 minute version of one of the experiences that they had. All that content is great, but we did the deep dive. We really, truly searched every corner that we could of the Gateway Experience tapes, right? We listened to every single tape, okay? I mean, that's absolutely amazing. Wave 1 through Wave 8, we put in the work. We've talked about this before. There is no weekend seminar. There is no little pill that's going to cure you. It takes work. Whatever your ailments are, right? It takes time and effort to heal the mind, body, and spirit. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So to start, we really looked at Robert Monroe. Who was Robert Monroe, right? He seemed like a very nice man, very loving and kind, and someone who had deep curiosity for the experiences that were occurring in his life. We read a lot about his past and then the work that he did to create the Monroe Institute. And we learned about his family, his wife Nancy, and his children, and some of his colleagues. Really just an amazing group of people that have paved the way for us to do the work that we're doing here in the Mind War podcast. And so part of our research is we read through Robert Monroe's 3-book trilogy, the first one being Journeys Out of the Body. This was written in the 70s, and we learned really about out-of-body experience in a scientific way for the first time. Robert Monroe was a real pioneer, right? He stepped out on the ledge, and he put himself in the line of fire to take a scientific approach to, learning about an occult topic, right? We learned a lot from his colleagues that these experiences that he was having, that they were often, associated with, the monks of the East who would go to the top of the hill and do yoga for 20 years, and maybe they could learn what Monroe was experiencing, right? But instead, he took a scientific approach, and he found a much faster and more reliable way to get into these states of being, right? Truly amazing. This was a great book, a foundational book. Very important to understand Robert Monroe and the Monroe Institute's role in bringing the out-of-body experience to the world and really making it not so scary. And we did that in the book, Journeys Out of the Body. Next, we read through Far Journeys, right? Robert Monroe's second book. And here we got to have Robert really describe his experiences, right? A lot like the same way that I did as I would listen to the tapes, I would come here and I would share with you the experience that I had. And that's a lot of what we learned here in Robert Monroe's second book, Far Journeys. We met all sorts of characters that he was coming in contact with, right? As he worked his way through the different layers that lay beyond the earth, as he was teaching us the different focus levels. And all of these different spirits that he was coming in contact with, who were teaching him what it means to become a human for the very first time, introducing us to the different locales where spirits who have recently passed, where they're going to be hanging out. How do we find them? How do we make contact with them? And ultimately, how do we help them? It was a beautiful book in the fact that one of the main takeaways was that all these different spirits that we are working with ultimately are just versions of ourselves. And that was so crucial to learn, because it takes away a lot of the fear that people have with doing this type of work. They're so afraid of contacting some kind of spirit out there, right? Oh, what if the spirit's evil or bad or whatever? Well, what we learned is you're helping yourself. Again, this is self-help. We are asking the questions and we are sending them out into the universe. And when we do, the answer comes from within. As above, so below. That was Robert Monroe's second book in his 3-book trilogy, Far Journeys. And finally, Robert Monroe's third book, Ultimate Journey. This is really the culmination of his work. And this is where not only in his writing style, but in the tapes themselves, we see a major change. A drastic shift away from self-help, which was really waves 1 through 6, to now we're starting to help people who have recently passed away move into the afterlife. Okay? So what we learned in this book was that Monroe was sort of a desperate man, and he was desperately trying to learn and grasp what comes next, in the afterlife. And he was doing this because his wife, Nancy, was sick, and he was afraid for her, I think, in a way. And now it was during this book, as we were reading the final chapter, and as I was doing everything I could to show reverence to Robert and his wife, Nancy, and all the amazing work that they've done. And as I read through a very touching part of that final chapter, and when I said Nancy Penn Monroe's name, this yellow marker, right after I said her name, rolled off the shelf in front of me, the shelf that is holding the laptop and the camera that's recording this. This pen, this marker had been sitting on that shelf for about 2 hours before recording. And as soon as I said Nancy's name, again, in a way that I was trying to show reverence and appreciation and love for Robert and Nancy and what they've done for us, this pen rolled about 3 inches off that table and landed on the floor. I don't know, man. That was very shocking for me, right? That was supernatural, if you will. I truly, honestly believe that Robert or Nancy were here with us at that very moment. And that's a beautiful thing. And most importantly, what we saw with Ultimate Journey was, again, that shift from self-help to helping others. And as that was occurring throughout this series, when we really started to transition away from the self-help, that's when Mother Mind War got her cancer diagnosis. Maybe just a coincidence, right? Nope. We don't believe in coincidences here in the Mind War. So that was Robert Monroe's 3-book trilogy. I thought it was very important that we read through those books and get to know the man who created the tapes and the purpose for them. Because again, all we've heard from the other podcasts and throughout social media is that the Department of Defense and the intelligence agencies use the Gateway Experience tapes to spy on the Soviets and the Russians and our adversaries wherever through remote viewing. Okay, sure. Awesome. Okay. Maybe that happened. Great. If it did, cool. Again, the Gateway Experience tapes, we've talked about it before. You can really follow any direction that you want when listening to them. You can come into these tapes with any purpose that you want. And if your purpose is to spy on the bad guys, okay, cool, man, go for it. That seems like a pretty lame reason to me. In what we learned here through this work, through this year-long journey, is that the Gateway Experience tapes are first and foremost self-help. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You're going to learn all sorts of cool tricks and tools that you can do all sorts of things with, but self-help is the most important. And that's what I want you to start your journey with. A mindset and a framework of self-help, okay? Now, in order to kind of, not just debunk the conspiracies that went along with the Gateway Experience tapes, because again, I don't know that we debunked any of them. The military and the intelligence agencies probably did use these tapes and probably are still using them today to do remote viewing and all sorts of other nefarious things, let's say, right? But one of the ways that we had to do that is by reading analysis and assessment of the Gateway process. Now, this is the CIA report that you see all over the social media. Again, you're going to see a million different podcasts talking about this. There's countless ones out there right now, right, that just talk about the conspiracy side of it. And again, what we learned, the very first, thing that we debunked, right, is that this report is not a CIA report. It was written by the Department of Defense, Army Intelligence, Army PSYOPs, right? And it was written by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonald, and he was working with a bioengineer named Itzhak Bentov, okay? And now this report was released by the CIA, right? They gave the approval for it to be released. So that's where I think people say, oh, that's, it came from our intelligence agencies. But this was such a cool report, right? This was our final season here, season 6, as we went through the Gateway Experience tapes. And this is what we read through. So many really cool scientific explanations of what was happening. Having someone of Lieutenant Colonel McDonald's stature, along with Bentov, the bioengineer, people who were authoritative, who are scientific in their method, having them scientifically describe the things that we were going through were absolutely amazing. For me, it felt great because it was reiterating so much of what we've learned throughout this year, right? Absolutely awesome. It felt really, really cool to have all of that cemented back in for us. So that, again, was analysis and assessment of the Gateway process. That report that we hear everyone talking about. So, that was the material that we went through. Again, we listened to every single tape. I reported to all of you the experiences that I had with each tape. This is a follow-along journey. I hope all of you were there with me as we went through this. We learned so many basic things. Again, having what I like, Beats headphones. You have to have a good pair of over-the-ear headphones. Having eye covers, very important to block out any light. And when you need to, if there are times where you need to open your eyes while you're listening to the tape, you can do that without seeing the room around you. So eye covers were very important. I talked at length about making sure that you're not too cold or too hot or uncomfortable in any way when you lay down. You can't have any strain points. Don't cross your legs at your ankles or, fold your arms on your chest or anything. Any of those strain points are going to start to get sore after 30 or 45 minutes of listening to a tape, and it's going to sink you right back into your body. And of course, one of the most important parts is the enhancements of THC, aka marijuana, and psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, right? Low dose psilocybin, low dose THC, when combined with these tapes, bring them to life, okay? It's almost immeasurable at the difference that you're going to find. You're going to be at level 1 if you do them sober-minded. You're going to be at level 1,000 if you do them, again, with low-dose psilocybin. You don't want to overdo it. I maybe took a little bit too much psilocybin a few times, and when I did, it was much more difficult to concentrate on the tapes. The trip took over, right? So there is a fine line there, and you'll find it for you if that's right for you. If you cannot do those type of things, don't let that discourage you from listening to the tapes. Please, by all means, still listen. But we learned about the basics of the tapes, our preparatory process, right? Those first steps that you have to take in order to get yourself into a relaxed state. And the very first thing we learned was our energy conversion box, right? Just a box that you visualize, that you put your worries and your concerns and your stresses. You put it in the box, you put the heavy lid on top of it. Because when we go and do our work while we're listening to the tapes, you can't be worrying about your daily life. You can't be thinking about the chores that you have to do or the project that you're working on at work or any of those things, unless that's the purpose of your tape. If you are listening to a tape with the specific purpose of overcoming an obstacle in a project that you're working on, then don't put the project in the energy conversion box. You bring it with you into the abyss, right? Or you put it all in there because the tape itself is going to help you deal with some emotional issues, or maybe just teach you a new tool, any of those type of things, right? Where you can't be distracted by your daily troubles, right? Next, we learned about the resonant tuning. This is where you're going to actually physically hum. And I described it almost like being in a cave with other cloaked, mind warriors. And you're all humming kind of in unison. And what that does is there's a real purpose for that. It's to make sure that you're breathing properly. It is to kind of get a vibratory feel going through your body, because when you do that, it does help release pain and things like that. So that was our resonant tuning. And then we learned about our resonant energy balloon. As we are breathing inwards, right? We're visualizing energy spiraling from the top of our feet, or from the bottom of our feet, spiraling upwards, refilling our chakras. This is where we also introduce the idea of Kundalini into this, where for men, you are going to refrain from spilling your seed. And as you do this breathing technique and create this resonant energy balloon, this energy is going to swirl up. It's going to start from your groin chakra, and the chemicals are going to flow upwards. This is what Kundalini is. This is what the process is. And you're going to feel your groin be on fire, and then it's going to move into butterflies in your stomach, and then your heart is going to start beating rapidly, and then your throat is going to swell up a little bit. Don't worry, it's not bad. And then your head is going to get this huge rush of chemicals, this relaxing pain relief chemicals. And then as we breathe out, all of that energy spills out the top of our head like a fountain and falls all around us. It's spinning around us as it falls, and then we breathe it back in again. That's our resonant energy balloon. This is one of the most basic kind of, occult or esoteric tools that we've seen throughout the millennia. thousands of years people have been talking about this and using this exact same technique, but Monroe finally put it on paper for us. He finally gave us a way to do this and explained how to do it in a way where we can do it quickly. We don't have to spend 20 years sitting on top of a hill or a mountain with doing yoga, right? We can do this much quicker now, okay? So then we learned our mantra. We are more than our physical bodies because we are more than physical matter. Beautiful. It's such an amazing yet simple concept. You have to let it sink in. You have to let it become a truth to you. And it will become true as you work your way through the tapes and start to experience yourself having the out-of-body experience. Because again, through the tapes, we learn how to have an out-of-body experience. An absolutely beautiful feeling. It starts with our perception leaving our mind. In Focus 12, our perception is floating out here. So our thoughts are out here. They are no longer in our physical brain. We are now thinking out here. We describe that as this feeling of static electricity. And then as we move up the focus levels, we leave our body as this plasma-like spirit body that kind of cracks open the shell of our human body, our physical body, and comes out almost like a squid or a gel or a plasma. It floats out of the top of our head. Just a beautiful feeling, just being pulled upwards. We've talked about that before. We've talked about falling backwards as we fall deep into the abyss and we see ourselves float. As we fall further backwards, we see ourselves moving further and further into the distance. That's a beautiful feeling, right? We learned about the living body map, where we visualize ourselves in the mirror and our different physical organ systems lighting up with different colors. And if the lights are flickering or not as bright as they should be, maybe they're dull, we heal them with our energy toolbar, aka our magic wand, right? Because what have we talked about? The Gateway Experience tapes are a scientific way to learn white magic, that healing magic, okay? And that's exactly what we did here. We healed our mind, body, and spirit with our energy toolbar. We then took that energy toolbar, our AKA our magic wand, we turned it into a cylinder, connected it into our third eye, sent the other end to the places we wanted to remote view, and sure enough, we're able to now, through our energy toolbar, our magic wand, we are able to learn remote viewing and actually view other places in the world. Absolutely amazing. And then, of course, we learned astral travel, where we are leaving the physical body, traveling first through locale 1, which is the here and now, the real world, where we can travel around our physical world and see what's going on in the present time. Then we move to locale 2, which is more of this dreamlike state, to where you can now have the dreams where you can actually control the dream. You remember them. You are more conscious during your dream. That's locale 2. And then locale 3 is that darkness, the abyss that's far outside of the universe. That is that place where we go for renewal and relaxation. And then we can go from locale 3 back to wherever we want. And all of this training we did first in the sleep dojo. Again, that was Focus 10, the sleep dojo, where your body is finally asleep, but your mind is wide awake. I described the sleep dojo as the upside down world in Stranger Things. That's kind of what you can think about it. It's just darkness, but you can visualize anything and it will appear right in front of you. Very amazing. Then we went on, and again, all of these were self-help, right? Self-help things. We learned so much about imagination, the importance of imagination. A lot of what we're doing in the Gateway Experience tapes is visualization. The narrators are telling you to visualize something in your mind. And that's so crucial because, as we know, there is no manifestation without imagination. If you can't imagine the building that you want to build, you will never manifest that building. You'll never build it, right? You have to be able to imagine it first. So much of this really was truly just imagination practice, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. You should be doing it more often. Allow your imagination to take hold and allow it to think in a million different ways at once and grab the answers that are right for you. And so again, we saw a dramatic shift in the tapes around wave 6 when we moved from that self-help and we moved more into this idea of helping others who have recently passed away. We went on all sorts of adventures trying to understand the different waiting rooms, basically, that people who've passed away, the different levels where they might be. We helped someone who recently died move from that very first level and move him into the afterlife. We went to the garden, this waiting center, this waiting place that you can go to if you, after death, if you decide not to go on one of the giant off-ramps that lead into one of the silly religions in the heavens that they describe. Monroe warned us those heavens. The heavens that were described by religion were fun for a very short time. And if you visit them, I think you'll learn the same very quickly. But if you keep pushing past those off-ramps on our inner state into the next realm, you ultimately come against the God of the Bible, right? Especially if you are someone who has had religion forced upon you. Again, we learned so much. The importance of removing the societal and religious and cultural wet blankets that are placed upon us by the place that we were born into, right? If you were born here in the West, you have, Christianity in its million different forms, or Judaism are about the only two religions you're supposed to have. Maybe Islam, if you believe in a very watered down way, and then maybe you can get into some Eastern religions, but just to study them. Of course, don't practice them, right? That's kind of the religious options we're given here in the West. Absolutely awful. We've ripped those things away, and we're going to spend so much more time in the next few series here kind of tearing those things apart and making sure that those wet blankets never get placed back upon us. Because again, the purpose of that, removing those wet blankets, allows your mind to be open to new energy, new information, new ways of thinking, right? So we removed those wet blankets. And again, we saw that major transition away from self-help, more towards helping people who have recently passed away. We had some amazing adventures there. Of course, like I've said before, the coincidental timing that as this transition began in the tapes, Mother Mind War was diagnosed with cancer. We spent the last few months at the Mind War Manor, right? It's so good to be back here in the Mind War studios, folks, I tell you. But we spent time at the Mind War Manor caring for Mother in her final days. As soon as I'm done here, I'll be going back to the manor, caring for Father, right? He is such an amazing guy. We've had such a great time, even though this tragic event has occurred in our lives. We're making the best of it. But we did some amazing things. We had a night there where one of the tapes, I believe it was 7-5 or 7-6, where we introduce someone to the garden, this center where you can wait and decide what you want to do in the afterlife, what path you want to take. And so before Mother had passed away, her and I, because she was asleep, she was under some heavy medication, and when I was listening to the tape, she was right there with me. We were both in a state of somnambulance, that state of hypnosis, and she was right there with me. And so I introduced her to Robert and Nancy in the garden, right? And it was beautiful because the next day I told Mother Mind War about that, and she liked that. Even in her state of being, she thought that was interesting. She said, "Oh, I remember you talking about these guys, right? I remember you talking about them." And I hope that after Mom actually passed away, that she did, meet up with Robert and Nancy. She was so good at making friends. So I know she won't have any problem getting to know Robert and Nancy. And they're going to help her out. And I think they did. That was a very, very interesting night, right? It was nice to have a little bit of, finally, a little bit of recognition for what I was doing, for Mom to actually recognize it. Because, folks, I've been talking to Mother Mind War and other family members about what I've been doing here in this 7-year art project. I've been at it for just over 3 years now. And I was very honest and open with them kind of from day one, and really no one liked to hear anything about what I was doing, right? They thought it was scary. They thought maybe it was evil, and they wanted me to stay away from it. But I spent a lot of time trying to talk to Mother Mind War about the tapes and stuff, and really wanting her to listen to them and things like that. And she just never was interested. She really just wasn't. So to have some recognition even in those final days was nice, And then we really ended the tapes with doing some amazing exploration, right? Some exploration that I was not, I guess prepared for. We did some visualization, where I guess now is a better time than any. So a few tapes ago, I talked about how I had seen basically a hand come down to the earth and pull the internet away and form it into a black cube that would float around the earth. And that's how we would connect with our internet and databases and AI and everything. Okay. Literally the next day, after telling all of you that story, I saw a video on YouTube, and I'll try to link it here, or at least put a picture of the cover, right? And it was a black cube floating around outside of our Earth in our atmosphere. And I go, well, what the fuck is this video? Of course I have to watch it. And so the author goes on for about 20 minutes to describe a book that was written, years ago. I wish I could remember the guy's name, famous author, but he talked about all of the same type of things that we've learned here. He talked about, again, how AI is going to advance so much that it does just become this black cube that floats around in the Earth's atmosphere, and that's how we connect to it. And then I guess the story goes on for thousands of years or whatever, right, into the future. And the story talks about how in the future, humans, our physical bodies will be here on Earth. This is not a joke, folks. This is completely separate from the Gateway Experience tapes. But this is exactly what we learned in Monroe's books and through the tapes. They talked about how in the future, human bodies will be stored here on Earth, but our physical spirits will travel the universe. That's exactly what Monroe talked about. How he went and visualized the future. He saw that the Earth, there's basically just a bunch of naked people in their resonant energy balloons. Their naked bodies were just standing there in their resonant energy balloons, but their spirit body was allowed to then travel throughout the universe. I mean, this book almost says word for word what Monroe was talking about and how we meet with the absolute and become one. We become part of the absolute again. We came from the absolute. We go back to it. Absolutely amazing. And that, again, made me question, and maybe this is a new conspiracy for the Gateway Experience tapes. I have a feeling that maybe the things that Monroe were teaching us were pre-planned. Maybe he didn't have all of these experiences organically. I believe some of what he is teaching may be some of the same teachings of the secret societies. Like, I think the Rosicrucians teach some of the same type of stuff. And then again, how close it was to this other book, right? Maybe he's actually trying to show us and teach us some of these truths that were hidden in secret societies. I don't know that. I suspect that is what he was doing. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? Whether it was an organic thing that he was experiencing as he went through, or if it was more of a narrated thing where he knew what he wanted to teach us, and through the tapes, he was able to get us to experience these ancient teachings. Either way, it doesn't matter because we have found the key. We are actually experiencing the things that occultism has kept hidden from us, right? And that's what we're doing here in the Mind War podcast. We're shining the light on it, okay? We're bringing these things that were once hidden, that were once occult, and we're bringing them out into the open, and I am sharing them with you as I learn them, okay? I was not taught these things by anyone else besides my own research. Of course, I was reading books and listening to the tapes and watching videos, so I did learn from other people, but I didn't join a secret society and have some teacher sit down and say, here's steps 1 through 5, here's how you do it, yada, yada. None of that stuff. This was all trial and error, and as I'm learning, I'm sharing with you. Okay, that's the beauty of the Mind War podcast and what we're doing here. So, just an amazing series. I am so excited that we made it all the way to the end. This was so much work, so much more work than most people will ever recognize. I mean, hours of study and research. I had to read the books before I would come on here and read with you. I mean, just a lot of work and so fulfilling. It's been so fulfilling and so amazing. I'm so thankful that we've been able to do this. And, I really am looking forward to moving into our next series, our series on magic, because the Gateway Experience tapes and the things that we learn scientifically, this is just one pillar. Next, we're going to move into the spiritual side as we learn magic, and that's going to be amazing too. And we'll do that very soon. Well, folks, in order to finish up the Gateway Experience series, I want to give thanks to a few folks. So first, I want to thank At Excellence Studios for all of the great music that he provided throughout this series. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. I want to thank my friend Joey, a.k.a. Daog, the member of a Judeo-Christian cult called the 12 Tribes. You can find them at 12tribes.org. I thank you for being out there, being a part of this series. Focusing on you has created some amazing results, and I look forward to seeing you very soon, my friend. I also want to give a big shout out and thanks to my friend Nathan, my childhood best friend who passed away from fentanyl just 3 months before I moved back home. I want you to know that I haven't forgotten about you. I know that we had talked about coming to find you and help you move into the afterlife. But obviously with Mother Mind War's passing, that took precedence. But don't worry, my friend. We'll see you very soon as well. And of course, we have to thank Robert Monroe. We have to thank Nancy Monroe and their family, all of the employees at the Monroe Institute, and all of the other researchers and scientists who worked with Robert Monroe on this project. They paved the way for us to do what we're doing here. We cannot thank you enough. And of course, I need to thank Mother Mind War. Not only for being an amazing mother and raising me the way that you did and caring and loving me. I cannot thank you enough for that. But your death made the Gateway Experience tapes real. And of course, I need to thank all of you. Our mind warriors, citizen samurais, guerrilla gurus, and warrior monks. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War. Another great episode, Agent Vic.
Yes, Victor, another great show.
So that's the end of the Gateway Experience series. You got everything you need?
That's correct, Victor. The series is complete.
Good. I'm going to need you to come down here and close everything up for me. Because I need to take a break.
Take all the time you need, Victor.